Okay, I'm starting recording now. Effective academic reading. So this is as I always start off saying, this is the current climate. So this is where this is why you read. It may seem obvious, but it's why you read. So we gain academic knowledge through debate. So you're debating with your peers, and you're also, when you're writing, you're creating a debate within the academic community. And so you need the skills to join the debate. You need the reading skills. So whereby you may have textbooks which aren't used as often, they give you the basic understanding, while journal articles give you the depth of coverage and the most up-to-date developments. And it's reading the articles that's time consuming, particularly if you're using vocabulary that's new to you. It's more specialist vocabulary, because when you're studying masters, you're studying in a much more specialized field. And also, if it's in a language that's not your first language, that makes it even more difficult. And then you're expected to deepen your understanding through reading. In addition to all the reading you're required to do, you need to have information literacy, meaning you need to be able to look through, use technology to look through GCU Learn, to be able to use RefWorks, to be able to use Cite Them Right, to be able to really enhance what you're doing and to be able to do it effectively. And all that can be a bit stressful. Anytime, by the way, you have any questions, please do just pop it in the chat and I can see it comes up. So reading the specific topic. So if you're reading specialist academic books, use the chapter headings to give you an idea about whether that chapter will cover something that you want to read about or information that you're looking for. Journal articles, most are research reports. You could use databases to find them. So if you go into the GCU library, you have the Discover bar at the top, but then you've also got lots of little icons which can take you through specialized searches, and one of them is databases. So you can go to the database section, you can type in your subject area, whether it be, I don't know, climate justice or surveying or construction. If you put in those things, then it'll bring you up to databases full of the most relevant and up-to-date journals. Then you also have the official reports by government departments and international organizations, and then remember to Cite Them Right to be able to reference them properly. And they collect the data, analyze problems and prevent solutions. And then you have at the bottom there again the databases. So, and I mentioned information literacy. So this is basically what it covers. And I'll go down to the third one there. It's all about gathering and accumulating the ability to be able to search for information. So you'll see there the third one, to construct strategies for locating information. That means being able to plan something, because I know when you have you have your coursework brief, sometimes it seems to be manageable. Other times it's a large statement and you've got an awful lot to find, and then it's not knowing where to find it or exactly what to search for. So that's where it's writing a plan. And I'm really in favor. I mean, I know I always hold up bits of paper, but writing a plan is absolutely fundamental to, in your head, to be gathering a plan, to know exactly what you're going to be looking for. The ability to locate and access information, review and compare it and evaluate. Because when you're doing your writing, and as I've mentioned in previous workshops, when you're doing your writing, you are evaluating the information that's presented to you and using that information to support or refute what you're saying. So you have the ability to organize information and apply the knowledge gained. That may seem very theoretical, but at the end of the day, you've got a vast amount of information out there, and you don't need it all, and you're the boss of your reading and your writing, so you can determine exactly what you need and what you don't need. So don't be afraid to dismiss information that's not necessary or that doesn't really answer exactly what you're looking for. Okay, so I'm saying here, read widely. You have a reading list for each module, all readings available from the GCU library. So develop effective reading strategies to make sure you get the most out of the text and approach it with a critical eye. In fact, I'll put that link there. You won't be able to get it from the website, but I will put it into the chat and you can have a look at that. Okay, so you can take that and keep it. That's a helpful guide for Reading University. So, critical reading. So, do you want to put in the, can you put in the chat a subject area that you are reading on? What subject areas are you reading? Put it in the chat so I've got an idea about what you're working on. Now that you've got your coursework. Sustainability and construction. Oh yes, water ethics and justice. I think I remember that assignment from last year. Yeah. So when you're doing these, when you're looking at these areas, you're not just looking at one thing. You're looking at a whole melange, as it were, of different perspectives and different viewpoints, and it's planning to know exactly what you're looking for. And then you'll be getting your information from articles and reports and possibly a bit of government reports and databases. So think about what claim is the text making. So when you look at a text, when you look at a journal article, look at the abstract. Look at the abstract at the beginning if it has an abstract, or look at the introduction, and also look at the conclusion. Look at the beginning and look at the very end, and ask yourself whether it's giving you something you really want to follow up. Are the claims being backed up by evidence? Are these claims being made by somebody if they carried out a study? Who's making these claims? Are there any deviations between this and other texts, or are they all the same? Or is it only one text? And what reasons are given for these claims? Because depending on what you're reading about, so water ethics and justice, there'll be different viewpoints put forward by different authors and different perspectives taken by different governments and different organizations and then different countries. They all have their different claims, and there'll be some which are older than others, and there'll be some which are relatively recent. So reading is not passive. Reading is active. So you have to evaluate what you've just read. So it's really, really easy to just read something for the sake of reading it, and the words go in and you think, oh, what was that? So when you start reading something, make sure that you know what you're looking for, whether you're looking for an answer to a question. And if you are, you look through that piece of text, you skim through it and try and work out whether it's actually answering what you've said. So you may have a few keywords in your head. You may have ethics and climate justice in your head. You may have water management and ethics under the whole umbrella of climate justice. You may have construction in Africa, you may have construction UK, you may have construction in China. I mean, whereabouts is your construction and the sustainability of it? So always kind of at the back of your head, always have the question. So that'll be when you do your dissertation, you'll be having a question. So what position is the writer presenting, and how do you know this? Is it biased? What evidence supports the writer's position? Is the evidence accurate? How does he collect it? Is it a study on 10 people, or is it a study on an entire organisation? Are the claims justifiable, and how does it compare to other writers in the field? And do you agree with the position? Spelling mistake field. Do you agree with the position? So remember, you are evaluating the evidence. The evidence is provided by the author, so you can evaluate whether you think that the opinion or the case put forward supports what you're trying to say. Reading journal articles, and I know journal articles are long, particularly if they're covering a new concept or using vocabulary you haven't met before. You possibly sometimes don't really understand the full extent of it. And this is, as I just mentioned, come up with some questions you need the text to answer. So don't be afraid to be critical. Don't be afraid to say this article doesn't answer what I want to say. Read the abstract to get an idea about what the article is about, if there's an abstract. Scan the text for signs of relevance. So scan it to see whether there's anything in it you think, or there's any words that come out that you think will be useful. Skim through the useful bits of the article, e.g. the conclusion, to get a flavour of what's being said. So you can skim through it. So skim through the introduction, skim through the conclusion. Look for specific things like words and dates. Okay, skimming means going through something very quickly and just skimming right the way through it. So you can skim through the whole article in 5 minutes or something. If you're scanning for something, you're scanning for a specific piece of information. So for example, if you're looking at construction management and the impact of Brexit, you'd be scanning through the article for the words Brexit, construction management. Whereas if you're just skimming through it, you're just skimming through it and then possibly reading the introduction and the conclusion. Scanning means looking for specific things. So consider the validity of the research process, method, sample size, etc., arguments being employed. So often in one of the articles, they have their collection methods, the methodology used to collect the data. So have a look at that and see whether you think that will give you reliable evidence or reliable data, whether the data set is useful. And then make a note of what you find and any questions the text raises. So sometimes if you see something there, it may raise a question, and then you may want to follow up that question by reading another article, another piece of text. So sources of fact. So gauge the reliability of the sources or authors. Sometimes if it's been peer reviewed, or sometimes you'll have a whole stack of authors there. So you might have an article that's written by contributions from 7 or 8 people. So quite often you can get the author's name and put that into a search engine and find out more about the authors. Understand the material and filter facts. And then you can evaluate how reliable the information is, depending where you've taken it from, which is why if you go to the GCU library, you can be assured that the information is reliable, because the university spends a lot of money on making sure that they've got all the most up-to-date, correct, huge big repertoire of all the information available. Whereby, if you're looking through newspapers or student blogs or whatever, it might not be quite as reliable. Student blogs, certainly. So summarize the meaning in relation to your own work. So you have your question, you have the case that you're putting forward, you have the study into something. You then have the similar work or work carried out by authors in that field. So you will be, because you're the writer, you are assessing and you're evaluating whether that work is useful or not. And you can be critical. And has the information been peer reviewed? Okay, you will be able to find this through the GCU library. Authorship, can you identify who wrote it? Is the author's place of work mentioned? Are they working at a university, a research institute? Can you check the reliability of fact and opinion? Web resources often disappear, which I think is one reason why it's very tempting to go straight into Google or something and type something in and a website comes up, but that website could quite easily be the following week have disappeared and not be searchable. And can you check the reliability of the data? So depending on the source that you're using. Okay, and then you're looking at, this is a critical look at the article you're reading. Is the author's position or interest made clear? So you're looking at from the, in fact, I think I will just now, I'll post up the Padlet. So a Padlet, for those of you who haven't been to any of my workshops before, a Padlet is like an interactive storyboard. Sorry, I disappeared there for a minute. Okay, so here's the link to the Padlet. Okay, So you should all be able to access the Padlet. Okay, so if you click on it and open it up and tell me whether you can access it, okay? Can you access the Padlet? Okay, good. So if you go to the first column, it's called academic article. Good. Go to the first column, it's called academic article. Oh, yep. The article is called Applications of Multi-Rotor Drone Technologies in Construction Management. Okay, so you would be, if you were writing a piece of coursework in that subject area, you would be looking through the article to check that the author's position or interest in it is made clear. You would see whether the language was emotive, which is highly unlikely. So if you look at the first, if you go down, so click on the article to open it up and look at the abstract, and you will see. So when I look at something, I usually look at the first couple of sentences, then look at the final sentence of the abstract. So you may get a flavour. So this is always quite a good way of seeing whether the article's any good for you or not. You may get a flavour. So look at the end of the abstract. It says, however, it can be predicted that the usefulness of drones will continue to increase in the future of the construction industry. Thus, this study will benefit construction managers in raising awareness of the use of these emerging technologies, and researchers in further exploring applications of multi-rotor drones in construction projects. So from the end of the abstract, you will see the position the author or authors are making. So the language isn't emotive. So emotive meaning emotional. So it's a factual piece of information. Is it clear when the article was produced? So let's have a look at the date. 2018. So that's 5 years old. So that's not too bad. Does the date of the information meet my requirements? Will it be covering a subject that you're looking for? Is the information clearly communicated? And there are various systems, and people work in different ways. So, for example, when I did my master's, so I looked at the abstract, and then I looked at the conclusion, and then did a little bit of working on the authors. Then I did a little bit of skimming through to look for particular words. So you're searching. So this is the 4S system of academic reading. So you identify the purpose and the audience. Well, the audience, if it's an article, if it's a journal article or a government publication or a specific industry report, the audience will be the people in your field. Skimming is the main points, introduction and conclusion to establish a position. So if you go back to that article and go to the very end, so you've read the last sentence of the abstract, scroll down the article so you get to the very end, and then you will see the conclusion. So the conclusion says, if you read the first sentence of the conclusion, it says, overall, drones are an increasingly popular technology developing society today. So that gives you a huge indication of what the article's about. So it's about the positive impact of the drones, and then how they have benefits over other drones. So it's often really good to skim through it and to look at the beginning, look at the abstract, look at the beginning, and then get your way to the end. And sometimes you can also look through I also usually look through the data which has been gathered. Select now, you need to select and study, read carefully and efficiently, know what you're looking for, the content, words and phrases, and evaluative words and phrases. So the content, words and phrases, and evaluative meaning the message that's coming across. So if you look at the conclusion, it says, overall, drones are an increasingly popular technology developing society today. So that's like a positive message. And then it also goes down and it will give you, I mean, I can see a sentence here. It says construction managers can benefit from the main functions of drones. You can also, you'll be using this in your writing, but this is just an indication to show you can examine the structure of the text. So when you're reading paragraphs, as in writing your paragraphs, you will see that the topic sentence will tell you what the paragraph of the section is about. You'll have the supporting evidence and it'll have a concluding thing. And that should continue. In a report, that should continue through the sections. And the first sentence being the most important sentence, so you can usually have a really good idea about what something. So you don't have to grab an article and read it all. If you've got 5 articles, to read for something, you can really pick out exactly what you're going to be looking for, and then decide in your technique, your method of selecting it, because it's a lot to read, and you can be quite picky about what you want to read. So you get the overall flavour. So you're never expected to read every single word. So this is also useful. These are the voices. The voices in the text. So when you discuss issues, you put forward your ideas using your own voice. So you're putting forward, for example, a topic sentence. The most important sentence will be your voice. It'll be the point you are making. And then you refer to other ideas using their voice. By introducing the authors and outlining and detailing what they say, according to or so-and-so stated that. Other voices are called the sources, and look at how the voices are used in the text. So if you go back to the article there that I've just been looking at, and go back up to the beginning, okay, and go to the introduction, and look at the way the other voices are brought in. So you can see there that they're using the article there. They're obviously using their other sources. So, for example, in the introduction, I think it's the one in the 3rd paragraph. You'll see, for example, in forestry and agriculture to achieve site-specific weed management. So that's providing evidence. So the authors here have used evidence from somebody else. So direct voice is exact words of the source. Indirect voice, whole and whole point out that. So the direct voice will be a quote, which you should use sparingly. An indirect voice is when the paraphrase, the idea is being incorporated. Whole and whole, 1990, point out that. The external voice, summarize the idea and identify the source outside the sentence structure. So you will see that that's mostly what happens. You will mostly see a paraphrase of the idea and then the authors. So if you look through that, the authors in the brackets at the end. So you're doing all your reading. So just put in the chat, when you do your reading, where do you make your notes? Do you make it on screen, or do you have a separate pad of paper? Sorry, I've got a cat here. Do you make it on screen? Are you able to do it on screen? Do you have a separate notes thing on screen? Oh, in a notebook, yeah. That's what I normally do. I have a notebook. Okay, on the screen, paper. Yeah, there's usually a difference between, it depends what everybody likes. I actually likes, okay. Yeah, I like paper. Highlight them. Okay. There's lots of different ways of doing it. So when you take notes, you are framing an overview. You're comparing different viewpoints, extracting logic, understanding the meaning, taking quotes. So when you have your report to write and you're planning each section of the report, you could be putting the points down, deciding exactly what you're going to be putting in the paragraphs, putting in the sections, and then beside each section, you could be writing some of the notes. And then what I usually do is I usually actually copy and paste the reference of the article where it comes from, so I know exactly where it's come from, because you don't want to be writing something and then losing it. Borrow quotes, add your own commentary, think why you are noting. use quotes, and I've said this before, use quotes sparingly, because they should only be used when they usually add something that cannot be said through a summary or a paraphrase, or something that's really, really pertinent. And then you add your own commentary. But it's really tempting to make notes on absolutely everything. But be really selective and be specific, and add notes when they're only really valid. Identify the purpose. Decide the most appropriate note-taking method. You can do lists. You can do mind maps, which is what I tend to do. You can do a matrix structure. You can do a hierarchical structure, and work out the take and how it relates to your work. The take means the point the author is trying to get forward, and ensure you paraphrase in your own words and note the source of the data. Yeah, we all read online now, and web-based often divide into screen-sized chunks, so it's sometimes difficult to gain the picture. Sometimes if you're reading it in actual paper, sometimes it's much easier to see, because your eye can follow one bit, and then you've got a book and you turn the page, or like an article. But if you're reading it online, once it disappears out of your sight, you move on to the next bit. It can be a little bit more difficult. And beware of reading something that contains too many bullet points, as it may lack detail. Beware of bias towards material, which is very easily accessible. So when you are searching for things on GCO Learn, or heaven forbid, the website, you type something and beware of using all the first material that comes up, because that's quite often been sent up to the top, and it may not necessarily be the most relevant or the most useful. This is really useful. You go to article, you type in Control F on Microsoft Word, and then I'll need to put in the word that you're looking for, and that will mean that you can scan through the text. So if you type in, I don't know, poverty or ethics or multi-rotor or drones or construction or something, in the article that you're reading, it'll take you to the bit that's relevant. Now, I found that out a couple of years ago. Make sure, this may seem obvious, make sure your eyes are positioned at midpoint of screen. So hence why having a laptop on the table is not great. So I'll bring mine up now, and your eyes should be looking at the camera, and then looking at the midpoint of the screen rather than down, because that'll give you a sore neck. And then you might need glasses, and make sure the light is really good, because I know since COVID, if any of you were either studying or possibly still at school or working, you might have found your way of working was very different from which it is now. So you just have to be a bit more selective. So just a few online tips. So use Immersive Reader in 365. Use it to customize your display. So change the background colors and alter the spacing between letters and lines. So change the color, lighten your screen. Read the text out loud and change the playback speed. Sometimes if you listen to it, it's much better for you. Reduce distractions. Reduce all the things that are going on. Reduce the eye strain by increasing font size 14 by narrowing the window. And as I mentioned in the previous slide, poor lighting. If you can, read a lamp that can shine directly onto the text. And poor light can cause eye strain. Okay, and I'm going to switch the recording.